You remember the Spice Weasel? Thraben University remembers the Spice Weasel. Hello folks, Phil Gallagher aka ThrabenU here for another Legacy video. And today, Lenny has asked me to play Death and Taxes, but asked for a spicy version of Death and Taxes. And right now, that's a little bit of a hard ask. So, a couple of things are going on with Death and Taxes in Legacy right now. Number one, the deck is damn close to dead. It's at about 2% of the metagame right now and falling. And this was a deck that was maybe not dominant, but quite strong for a very long time. And the Yorian builds of Death and Taxes, the 80 card version, specifically offered a really strong endgame that kept it competitive versus the various grindy decks of the format. And the decks usually played pretty close to a 15 card sideboard for combo, discounting our bird serpent friend here. But Legacy is not about grinding right now. Legacy is about sticker goblins and ancient tombs and lotus petals, and there's still some like mid-range control deck lists around the format, a lot of times focused around Up the Beanstalk. But Death and Taxes is a deck that always tries to adapt to its metagame. So I did find a relatively spicy deck list that I think is trying to hedge not against the like Orcish Bowmasters Up the Beanstalk world, but against the Namesticker Goblin world. I found this list in the 5.0 deck list dump. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce that name, but it's an oddball list for a number of reasons. Number one, it's a 60 card deck list when 80 cards is generally accepted as the way to build Death and Taxes. Number two, it has both Giver of Runes and Mother of Runes. It is maxed out on Samwise the Stouthearted. It is maxed out on Solitude. And I want to talk about like card ratios for a minute. When you are playing an 80 card deck, you really want that extra redundancy because you're not always going to just have Swords to Plowshares. But this is a 60 card deck that is so strongly making the statement, I need to have early interaction, that is playing 4 Swords, 4 Solitudes, and then 4 Samwise as well. So on turn 2, you can do something like Solitude, pitch it to remove some card, and then get the Solitude back to your hand. There's other cool tricks that this thing can do, such as getting your Wastelands back. Generally speaking, this is not a card that I have been overly impressed with, because we live in an Orcish Bowmasters world, but look at this deck list. This deck list is not hedging against Bowmasters. Like, we have Thalias, we have Spirits, we have Samwise, we have Mother of Runes. You can count this as an X1 creature as well, if you'd like. This is not metagaming against the blue decks at all, and I think this is rather interesting. As far as the Spiceometer goes, we also have Sarah Paragon. I recently just absolutely crushed a cube draft and got crushed in another one by this card. It is very powerful. And when you have like this for recursion and the, at this point, spicy Sword of Light and Shadow as recursion, you can bring back cards like Solitude a bunch of times with your Sword of Light and Shadow and Samwise, and Sarah Paragon and Sword of Light and Shadow let you replay your stuff that is just going to get killed in the early game. The sideboard also is like playing some things that are relatively targeted. If we kind of break down the sideboard, and let's count Rest in Peace as an unfair targeted card, which is a little disingenuous, but like for the purposes of illustrating the point, this is a sideboard that is heavily geared against combo decks. And I think the idea is that this high density of white exile-based removal is going to help carry you against like black grief aggro decks, your Delver decks and stuff in game 1. So this is about the spiciest thing as far as I can find in terms of D&T deck lists, and if you like what you see today and you need to purchase some cards for it, check out Cool Stuff Inc. and use promo code ThrabenU to save a little bit on your order while supporting my content. Let's battle. Hey, Phil from the future here. I recommend round 2 very highly from this video. It is absolutely ridiculous what Samwise did in that round, and it is one of the craziest games I've played in a long time. Okay. Hand is solid. We've got Mother of Runes into Stoneforge Mystic for Cauldra, which is just a decent way to start off a game in a vacuum. Tropical Island is potentially an indicator of a fair deck, like a Beanstalk deck or a Delver deck list. I don't get to know for sure yet. At the same time, this could just be a Storm deck. If it's a Storm deck, I want to pressure my opponent as quickly as possible, and if this is a Control deck or a Delver deck, I'd like to play this Stoneforge Mystic around a Daze. So I think I am interested in putting the shields up here and just passing the turn and then hoping to resolve a triple protected Stoneforge Mystic after that. Signs pointing towards an Up the Beanstalk deck in at least rug colors. Well, shit. Okay. Put in Solitude. That covers a creature that my opponent puts in uncounterably. I do have Caracas to bounce a creature on my turn. The issue here is Omniscience. If my opponent plays Omniscience and then like an Emrakul or Omniscience and then an Atraxa, the Caracas isn't really enough on its own anymore. This kind of covers creatures, kind of. I think I'm going to put in the Solitude anyway. Yeah. Because I am expecting my opponent to play legendary creatures. That's an Emrakul. So in case you're not familiar with this situation, if I had put in Caracas and bounce the Emrakul, my opponent just Omnisciences and gets another extra turn. And Atraxa. Yeah. With the extra turn. That just kills me. Rough. So, I have a bunch of medium quality cards. So for example, Containment Priest can stop Show and Tell for a creature, but doesn't stop if Omniscience casts it. Chalice doesn't actually stop Show and Tell, it just stops cantrips. Deafening Silence doesn't stop a Show and Tell, but it slows down Show and Tell Omniscience into creature beyond that. And then, like, Touch the Spirit Realm is fine. Battle of Bywater is a little sketch. Path is potentially better than Swords to Plowshares. So let's figure out what I don't want from the main deck. And the main deck is lean, like, or this way for you. Our curve is like very much at this 2-drop slot. Something that I didn't talk about is like we're not on Flickerwisps here. We are much lower on the curve. Probably get rid of Giver of Runes. It's actually kind of hard for me to assemble Mom plus a flyer. Don't have Flickerwisp after Containment Priest as additional removal. Samwise Wasteland is a thing. Skyclave is not great. I probably don't need Sarah Paragon. This gives me Chalice, Deafening Silence, Touch, maybe Path. I can potentially trim a Swords or two since I do just also have these Solitudes and play Containment Priest or Battle of Bywater. Also wouldn't be crazy to just like trim Vial here. And bringing in like Deafening Silence, Chalice, Deafening Silence as other early game plays. I don't hate this. And then I don't run into Containment Priest on my own Chalice. Keep a Miser's Aether Vial. Oh, this is fine. It is a pretty strong 6-card hand. I think that's what I get to say about it. So with another land drop, I can start looking at potentially wastelanding my opponent and then bringing it back with Samwise. I think I worded this poorly. Deafening Silence helps with Omniscience-based lines because my opponent can't, like, cantrip afterwards. They can still play a creature specifically afterwards. The Plains is totally fine. So I can now uncounterably flash in Deafening Silence and put in this Containment Priest. Now I can go ahead and put in my Caldera as a clock. They do have the Omniscience. Yeah. This is what I mean by, like, my cards kind of do stuff. Okay, my opponent just has Emrakul next turn. And can cast it off of Omniscience. With Force of Will backup for my turn. I think they've just got me. Like, I can Solitude... Or not. This is per turn? Alright. I can't Solitude... No, I can Solitude right now. Okay, game's still afoot. It's just bad. Alright, so my opponent puts Emrakul under Force of Will, Misty, Lotus Petal. No Omniscience? No, yes, Omniscience. The formatting of this card online is a little weird. So my opponent casts Show and Tell. So now I can Solitude, pitch Samwise. I still cast this card, so like we don't have to worry about our Containment Priest. I will get rid of the Emrakul. The Annihilator is scarier than anything else right now. My opponent discards their Lotus Petals that they don't need while Omniscience is a thing. And if my opponent finds another Emrakul here, they've got me. Okay, they don't need that land anymore. Let's see what they do. They don't get to cantrip again. It is another Emrakul. Okay. We tried.
Today's video is sponsored by Moxfield.com, which is, in my opinion, the best Magic the Gathering website for hosting your deck lists online. One of my favorite features is that you can create your own custom tags for when you're deck building. So let's say you're building a commander deck and you want to know, hey, how many copy effects do I have? You can just create a tag and sort everything, and there's fun little hotkeys so that you can do this more quickly. So really, please consider checking them out if you are looking to tinker with deck lists online.
Okay. For round 2, I've kept my opening hand here. Ooh. I've got Vial into Thalia into Samwise Wasteland as a plan. We'll see if this hand ends up being fast enough. My opponent can just go, like, Soul Land, Namesticker Goblin, hop off. And then the Wasteland's never in the conversation, and Thalia isn't either. Okay. This is looking slightly more like initiative than goblins. Pass turn? Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. I would really like to Samwise this Wasteland to Wasteland a second time. I don't think I get to let my opponent go to their main phase with this Ancient Tomb mana, though, so that is what it is. I just can't let my opponent potentially just slam a Muxus next turn if I'm wrong, and this is just a Goblin's Keep that was very land-centric. Alright. It is. It was not a turbo hand. My opponent gets 2 Battlecry Goblins. I am going to be firmly on the defensive this game. I'm at 18. File ticks up to 2, where it probably stays for the rest of the game. I think the plan is Rishadan Port, and then Thalia ambush in combat. Rishadan Port is not really going to be good after this turn, because once my opponent plays a Battlecry Goblin, they can just double activate that in their upkeep. Oh no. Thicker Goblin. Fuck that guy. I'm just going to let it resolve. I really need a low roll here. That is not a low roll. So that's enough for Battlecry Goblin and activate. Yeah. I'm going to take 6 this turn. Yep. I will get to Thalia and take out the first Battlecry Goblin. But there's just another one coming. Solitude. Pitch Samwise, Vial in Samwise, return Solitude to hand is pretty good. Let's plan on doing that. I'm still gonna hold Thalia back. I'm not fully stable yet. Is that gonna come in tapped or untapped? Do you have another sticker goblin? Okay, it is just Battlecry Goblin. Sure. So now, Solitude, pitch Samwise. Solitude the Battlecry Goblin. Let the evoke happen. Opponent does not attack. And then at end step, activate. Yes. Samwise. Return Solitude. I think I end up bouncing this Samwise a decent amount of the time, so I'm just gonna make Thalia my ring bearer. I'm gonna leave this at 2. So I'll make a plains as a land drop. Hard cast Solitude next turn. I still don't know quite what the plan is for transitioning to the beatdown. It probably involves drawing something like a Stoneforge Mystic. I have to keep my opponent off Amuxus longer term, which is tough. Breaches. Okay. Sure. So at end of turn here, I think it's pretty free to go ahead and bounce Samwise, activate the vial, put Samwise back in. I have no targets for this, but then the ring tempts me again. Keep Thalia as ring bearer. A new Thalia. Not exactly what I want. So my opponent can't both draw and play Muxus next turn. So I think it's going to be okay to just cast this in this turn cycle. Get rid of the breaches. I think I'm interested in this looting. We're going to go ahead and loot. This is just, that was put there from, no, it is from the battlefield. Let's discard the secondary Thalia. Yeah. And then I have some very cute things that can happen with this second Samwise. Your ring bearer is legendary, so I can make Solitude my ring bearer, bounce it with Karakas, replay it. Alright, my opponent just takes the damage. I'll pass the turn with some Samwise nonsense available. Whoa, that's spicy. I'm gonna ask my opponent about that. See if they respond. They don't. So, can I legend rule Samwise and return Samwise? I think so. I think that's worth learning. I'll keep a Samwise. Return a Samwise. Yeah, okay, that's cute. Let's make the Solitude my ring bearer for the next turn. So whenever my ring bearer deals combat damage to a player, each opponent loses 3 life. Nice. So I can now tap. Yes. Yo dog, we heard you like Samwise. So we Samwised your Samwise. Keep Solitude as the ring bearer. Go to combat. Send them all. I have fully transitioned to the beatdown here. We'll loot through a land. This is a cool showcase of what my deck is capable of doing. So now my opponent loses 3 more life. I probably just Rashad and port my opponent to keep them off of Muxus. That I can still Solitude in an absolute emergency. But I think I'm far enough ahead now where this is just my plan. Alrighty. Yeah. That Samwise engine was really cool. That's the first time I've kind of had that pop off to the point of finishing it while playing D&T, I think. That was game 1, 2. Sick. I'm going to pick up a Path to Exile as additional removal. I can pick up Containment Priest to help with Moxus. That's probably about it. He could board like the Sword of Light and Shadow or the Touch the Spirit Realm. Touch the Spirit Realm is technically additional removal, but is very slow for this matchup. Spirit of the Labyrinth is not exciting. I'm going to trade those out for Containment Priest. Path comes in for maybe Lion Sash. Lion Sash is really slow. It's my secondary piece of equipment. Or I guess tertiary. I do have Jitte there hanging out off screen. Touch the Spirit Realm is cool for Solitude Blink shenanigans. I think it's just too slow as a removal spell, though, so let's just submit that. So this opening hand probably is not playable without the white mana. Doing the math to like see what is my chance of drawing a white land isn't even really worth doing because I just play 8 colorless lands here. So like you start looking at 15 out of my remaining cards and like I'm going to be like very clearly less than a fourth of a chance to draw a land each time. Yikes. So we'll go to 5. Okay. Probably just plains goes back. For the most part, these are not the sort of cards that I am looking for. The hope is that I like wasteland my opponent off an Ancient Tomb past the turn line. That didn't happen though. White removal? Fuck. Bad opponent's hand? Bad opponent's hand would be nice. Okay, it's not an Ancient Tomb. Ruby Medallion. That makes Wasteland and Port considerably worse. I think it needs to be Stoneforge. So the conceptual way that I win this game is something like my opponent goes for a Sticker Goblin, I Solitude it. I get Kaldra in play, Wasteland them, and then 2 turns down the line I get Jitte. Okay, so there's the name Sticker Goblin. We were ready for that. So let's just take that out. My opponent could name Sticker Goblin again because of Ruby Medallion. A Goblin Matron. My opponent goes and finds Muxus. So the plan of like Wasteland plus Rashad and Port can be pretty good. Let's take out City and start clocking my opponent. We have a very real end game. Like there is a Muxus looming. Name Sticker Goblin could get my opponent there as soon as this turn. It is a Goblin Rabblemaster. And a Tarfire, sure. I will probably outclock a Goblin Rabblemaster, especially considering the Jitte that I have here. I think I am playing Jitte rather than playing Thalia. Like, I'll just take a decent-sized hit to have the ability to remove the Rabblemaster on the next turn cycle. Oh fuck, that's their top deck. I can't port at this stage of the game though. So let's see how this goes. Did we just whiffed on 6. It happens. That Muxus is still quite scary, and I can't really bounce it. I've got problems. So if I kill Goblin Rabblemaster with Jitte counters, how much does Muxus get? +1/+1. This is 7, 8, 9, 10 exactly. Okay. Send it. Opponent goes to 5. I have 2 Jitte counters. I'll be passing the turn. And what happens next may be a little sketchy. I am going to kill Rabblemaster. So this is, in theory, 10 damage. 7, 8, 9, 10. So, we bounce the Muxus. I take 3. My opponent doesn't replay their Muxus? Cool? Like, we were still going to be playing a game of Magic. Like, my opponent gets some number of blockers. Kaldra has to be blocked. I have Kaldra Jitte. But, like, we're still playing Magic there. GG's. All right. Um, my opening hand's a little weird here. I don't tend to keep colorless Aether Vial hands, but when you have two, I think it's perfectly acceptable. Especially since I can go Wasteland my opponent's land drop, play second Aether Vial, and then just kind of like vomit every card I draw into play for the rest of the game. We doing goblins again? No. Giver of Runes, protection from colorless is going to be particularly useful against Patchwork Automaton, which is going to be a big boy. My opponent opts to cycle neither Bauble, potentially an indication that they need the artifacts for something like Metalcraft. I am fully just going to lean into attacking my opponent's mana here. And we'll drop the secondary Aether Vial. My cat is outside the door, just screaming bloody murder. Apologies if you hear any of that. According to him, he has never been fed in his whole life, despite the fact that he was a yogurt thief this morning. Alright. I take some damage this turn from Patchwork Automaton, but after that I am stable to it with Giver of Runes. Unless something weird like Dismember happens. There's the Giver. We're going to take both vials up. And I am fully good with just Rashad importing my opponent. And waiting until I draw some good cards. Opponent keeping their baubles around. Artifact count matters for things like Mox Opal, for, your Thought Casts, Thought Monitors, Convoke, whatever you do with Kappa Cannoneer. Improvise. So I'll go ahead and activate. Say yes. Put in a creature. And then I'll go ahead and block and give protection from colorless. And then end of turn I get to dump in one more mom. Leave the vials where they are. Spirit of the Labyrinth is insane. I'm fine just chipping away for one here. Like, the Spirit of the Labyrinth will become a real clock in short order. And I potentially get to just kill the Patchwork Automaton in combat this turn. That is a Chalice of the Void, which my opponent is casting on 0. Now, my opponent has more 0 drops in their deck than I do. This is probably a concession to the fact that, like, a Kappa Cannoneer is incredibly important for them to cast. And that might be what's happening exactly right now. Yeah, so I ported to try and keep this from happening. Kappa Cannoneer can become unblockable, which is a problem. But this is on Artifact ETB, not cast, which is an important distinction. Let's get a Spirit of the Labyrinth and this next Mother of Runes. I think at this point, I'm going to start working one of the vials up to 5, and then I'll leave the other at 2. I was about to say, I don't really care about dumping extra 1-drops into play anymore, especially since I've already drawn 3 of them. Let's start becoming the beatdown here. Things don't exactly feel good here. I think I need to give this Pro Blue so it can swing in. I don't know that I can do another attack here. I still need to fog this attack, which requires Giver and one other creature back. So the fact that I started ticking a vial up towards 5 in respect of Solitude keeps me from dealing 2 points of damage right now. And I don't think we're quite at throw away a body territory yet. My attacks become much harder if my opponent leaves back a colorless creature and a blue creature like they've just done. Okay. So my opponent can draw 1 card per turn, so like a Bauble cash-in is acceptable. Opponent gets that card. This vial goes up to 4. This one stays at 2. All right. I could move Lion Sash to Spirit of the Labyrinth and start scaling up a Spirit of the Labyrinth that can reasonably attack. I don't think I'm going to do that quite yet. I think I'm just going to hold up, double Lion Sash eat, and see where this game goes. I think it dragging on is going to slightly favor me, but it's weird. End of turn, we'll eat both baubles from my opponent's graveyard. And we're like nearing on the point where combat is actually favorable for us again. Like Lion Sash can attack this turn. The Vial at 5, Vial at 2. I don't mind that. Let's just put that in immediately. Yeah, and let's start crashing in with the Lion Sash. All right, my opponent has declared no blocks. We will just be eaten good with Lion Sash. And doming my opponent for 6. And presumably, in some capacity or another, I will be able to Alpha Strike and kill my opponent next turn. There's currently no cards in graveyard for Lion Sash to eat. I don't really know that that's a problem, though. Alright, Kappa Cannoneer gets feisty. The 6 damage is no big deal. I'm not in danger of Otawara bounce. I'm not in danger of Dismember disrupting my kill. This seems like an actively bad thing for my opponent to do. Like, cards in graveyard make it easier for me to get a deterministic Lion Sash kill. Yeah, this gives me a deterministic onboard Lion Sash kill. By double protecting, double eating. So, lesson learned. At this point, I can always no to both of those Aether Vials. They're on the numbers they need to be on for the rest of this game. So, eat. Target Lion Sash. Protection from colorless. Send it with 2 Mother of Runes backing it up. Okay. It's possible my opponent punted this game twice. Playing the artifacts was just like objectively very bad because it just gave me a guaranteed win. But it's possible my opponent early on just got impatient in trying to put Kappa Cannoneer in play and then locked 0 drops in their hand, which could have been better as the game went longer. The second one, like the artifacts in graveyard there, was just objectively a mistake, but this one, it's hard for me to evaluate not knowing their hand. So I like Chalice on 0. It was very good when my opponent did it. I think I'll do the same. Stony Silence is a great thing to have access to. Path is fine. Rest in Peace is fine. Touch and Battle of Bywater are fine in respect of Urza's Saga. I'm not too gung-ho about Jitte when I'm going to board in 2 copies of Stony Silence. I'll probably still keep Lion Sash around. Some number of moms can probably go. Mom still respects Dismember, which is certainly a thing. Thalia's mid. I might trim some Thalias. I could just, like, not super respect Dismember in particular and just get rid of my moms. They're not that good of a card in the matchup, despite the way that that previous game went. Like, the moms were specifically good because they were backing up a giver. Let's go down on those. This gives me Stony, Chalice, Path. Rip's weird to board in when I have a Sarah Paragon. I'm going to board this. I'm going to call this good enough for this game. I'm going to think about these more next game. But I spent some of my sideboard time grabbing a cough drop. No regrets. My opening hand's great. Just full stop. Good hand is good. I have an Urza Saga Keep covered. I have an Artifact Go Wide thing covered. I have an Emery hand covered. And I have 3 lands and 2 hate cards. And my opponent's mulliganing deeply. What is happening? Sure. It's Emery. Emery will eat my Swords to Plowshares and hopefully really decrease the power of my opponent's hand. My opponent led on an artifact land in particular. So, the Stony Silence is going to hit like a fucking truck. Alright. Oop. Okay. It resolved as expected. Opponent's keeping Bobble around, presumably for Metalcraft for Opal. That is an Urza Saga. It, oh, baby. The thing that I'm about to do is illegal in 37 states. Just absolutely, absolutely illegal. Shuts off all my opponent's artifact mana, shutting off Urza Saga. They need to cycle Bobble and hit Ancient Tomb to have any chance at being competitive in this game. Yep. Yeah, without an immediate Soul Land, like, the game just ends, because I do Wasteland, Urza Saga, Samwise Wasteland back, and I've just got potentially everything that can happen covered. And they did not have it. I'm gonna go ahead and play land drop, pass turn, and then upkeep Wasteland. The Urza Saga search itself is not scary. Like, I don't care about that. So my opponent will float mana. I'll go ahead and go to their draw step. In their draw step, I'm just gonna resolve Samewise. Yeah, I wanted to do that in upkeep before they got another chance at drawing Force of Will. But that was not in the cards. Port is a reasonable draw. Oh, excuse me. Never get sick, folks. Life pro tip. Don't do it. I gave up and did a virtual doctor's visit this morning to get some antibiotics to try to get this finally cleared up. Are we 4-0? No. That's right, I lost that first round. It feels like I'm 4-0. That match 2 was just so good. I got a tricky one here. I think this is just too much air for me to keep this even on the draw with an additional card. I'm going to think about it for a second. I've thought about it. We'll mulligan it. This is a stronger hand. I probably put Lion Sash back. I'm just not going to be able to easily sink mana into that this game. Now let's remove this draw step stop. I usually don't need that. My opponent has fetched to ponder and chooses to shuffle. Ooh, I draw a Wasteland. Yeah, let's do that. I don't know what kind of Underground Sea deck my opponent is yet. Like, okay, well, there's some endgame. My opponent's potentially, like, somewhere in that Death Shadow ballpark. Wasteland is good. Let's play my Thalia here. The Thalia is dazable, but may force my opponent to keep their... Never mind. Alright, so we see Murktide Regent from my opponent. So, slightly less likely to be in the Death Shadow ballpark. Slightly more likely to be in the, like, blue-black, just general tempo shell. Okay. Nobody has lands, but I potentially have an Aether Vial. I do have an Aether Vial. And since Giver of Runes does not protect itself, we will just crash on in with that and take our chip points of damage. Alright, so my opponent gets their second color back. I imagine I'm now going to be staring down a Murktide Regent. I'm correct. I have 2 removal spells for that, though, so I'm not just dead to it. I could talk about this turn for like 40 minutes, I think. I'm going to cast Swords to Plowshares. And, like, just not go into how complicated that turn cycle can actually be. Cool. Basic Plains is really fucking OP, folks. So, in this turn cycle, my opponent might do something like flash in an Orcish Bowmasters, so I don't want to just, like, preemptively play out Spirit. I think I am just going to cast a Jitte. I don't care if it gets countered. And then I'm just going to kind of leave a looming Spirit of the Labyrinth. Attack into Bowmasters doesn't make sense. Like, my opponent might not have it, but if they do, it matters a lot. And we'll just Stoneforge for Cauldron here. And give my opponent something to care about. So they're going to Fatal Push my Giver. and then just throw in the towel. Yeah, okay, that's fair. In terms of sideboarding, I definitely want Path as additional removal. Shutting off the graveyard is probably good. There's Murktide Regent and Mystic Sanctuary to care about. Touch the Spirit Realm, Chalice, Battle of Bywater fall into this secondary tier of things that I can consider playing. An issue that I have here is that my deck is not really built to beat Bowmasters. I might need to do this to bring back my large number of X1 creatures. My sideboarding is a little trickier because I didn't see like Delvers or Griefs or Troll Reanimate or Shadow or Sauron's Ransom to give me that like locked in, this is exactly what my opponent is doing feel. I don't think I'm ever boarding that one. Let's not touch. Then I don't know. It might be that like Thalia's Taxation is just like not where I conceptually want to be. Like it dies to Bowmasters, and I think Samwise and Spirit of Labyrinth have more upside than Thalia does. This hand is solid, but could use both more mana and removal. I don't think I'm gonna complain about it, but it is not perfect. The hand's pretty sick if Rest in Peace resolves, and is solid if Mother of Runes makes it back around the table. But between Daze, Push, Dismember, Snuff Out, Force of Will, Fatal Push if I didn't say that one already, there's a lot of things that can just take this out. We got pushed. There's the second land. So, better against counterspells, better against Bowmasters. I have to take my pick here. I think the Rest in Peace is better the earlier it comes down. It's like very awkward playing this when like the Samwise is a very real portion of my plan. So I'm actually kind of secretly hoping that this does trade for a counterspell. Yeah, this is totally fine. Because otherwise I'm slightly neutering these two cards. And the potential Sarah Paragon that I could draw later on. That's actually a surprisingly good draw. This means that Bowmasters doesn't kill Lion Sash anymore. Opponent says no. That's okay. Like, I'm watching my opponent's card count decrease, and I have really good end game potential here, assuming that I continue to hit land drops. Ooh. We are in bug. There be beans over there. Leovold's fine. Makes this Rashadenport more awkward. Not unusable. Just awkward. Because if this resolves, my opponent can't draw more than one card each turn. So in my opponent's draw step, I can technically Rashadenport them. I'm not going to do that. Because if my opponent uses a removal spell in response, it's just very awkward. Sure. Please attack. Opponent does not attack. That's fine. I don't think I'm going to risk the whole Rashadenport thing. I think there's little upside to doing that. I'm going to set a stop in my opponent's draw step. And then we're going to fucking fight. I could pick the fight on my own turn, but I conceptually would like to pick this fight in a way that does not make my opponent draw extra cards with Leovold. So let's attempt to remove Murktide Regent. My opponent doesn't get to draw this card. Alright, we've done the thing. I could port my opponent. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to play Samwise around Daze a little bit later on. Oh yeah? I don't think I want Spirit of the Labyrinth to leave play. I don't think I want to give my opponent the opportunity to brainstorm. Let's go ahead and return this. Spirit of the Labyrinth becomes my ring bearer. I'll sacrifice the Samwise. My opponent now offers this trade, which I think I'll take. It unlocks my opponent's cantrips, but it also unlocks my Rashadenports. And While this is still in play, I'm going to go ahead and port my opponent so that they can't do a post-combat cantrip. And I've drawn a Giver of Runes. I'm okay getting that established and just taking my opponent off of main phase green. I would prefer to take them off of blue and double port them, but I've just got 2 Solitudes coming, so a Murktide isn't the end of the world. Let's remove this stop. Okay, yeah, so my read last turn did keep them off Ponder. There's an immediate fetch to shuffle. Oh, sorry, they chose to shuffle with the Ponder in the first place. Okay, they pick up and up the Beanstalk. I don't have a lot going on right now, but I'm not losing the game either, so I guess that's fine. And I think I'm just going in for double porting my opponent off of black. Makes things less awkward with cards like Orcish Bowmasters. Okay, sure. Okay, like Solitude is a good magic card and all, but I don't want this many. I am going to go ahead and attack into a possible Endurance. And then we'll stay the course. And double Roshan port my opponent. At this point, I kind of need like a Stoneforge Mystic type card. Alright. There's another up the Beanstalk, so the Force of Wills and Murktide Regents and such will be very good from here. And we're chilling. Send it. At this point, I might just be playing Solitude as a flash creature and abandoning the whole Rishadan port plan. I can't port my opponent off black anymore. I can't port them off of blue. About the only thing I port them off of is Hardcast Force of Will. Have they used forces yet? They've used a Force of Will. I think I'm going to continue porting. I think I don't want to use a Solitude as a flash threat. And the words that are going to come out of my mouth might sound kind of crazy, but like it is possible that this game comes down to something like decking. My opponent is already at 35 cards in library. I can remove their next 4 threats. I have already removed 1 Murktide Regent and a Leovold. So like, there aren't that many hard threats in the deck. And especially if I can just like invalidate Daze as a counterspell by drawing a land. And I think I'll do this on my own turn. Anyway, as long as I can invalidate Daze. A Stifle? Sure. I think I'm going to take a hit for 5 and then Solitude again, rather than Path to Exile into Daze. Like, I know what I need to respect. Targets Brainstorm, sure. That does grow the Murktide by another one. The Murktide hit is really only a hit for 3 if I attack back with a Solitude anyway, so you know. That's fine. This is presumably the shuffle for what was a very, very fast Brainstorm. Yeah. A secondary Murktide Regent potentially forces me to Path to Exile this right now, before my opponent just draws 2 more cards and is much more likely to be able to back up this Murktide Regent. So this is Dazeable. But I think this is too much pressure. It is a Daze. So this is where we're at when the stack clears. I am going to take the hit for 10. The goal is to remove both Murktides with Solitudes. I might not be able to do that through Force of Wills, but that's the plan. Alright. Let's try. So here we go. That is Force of Will, which means that I die in the air taking 17. That is unfortunate. Like, I jockeyed for position really well. Even if I pro blue and attack for 3, I am still just dead. Like, I knew what I needed to do. I knew what I needed to play around, but my opponent forced me into a situation where I could not reasonably play around the Daze. So I now know that my opponent is Beans, which I did not previously know. I don't know that my sideboarding is changing. Like, Battle of Bywater definitely becomes worse, but as we saw, I lose the game to cards named Murktide Regent. And if I keep Murktide Regent out of play, I'm pretty good. This is not what I am looking for in an opening hand. I also don't think I mulligan it. I just don't have any pressure here. This is just a hand that is keeping removal. Like, Vile is conceptually quite good in the matchup about 3 turns from now, but I am fully reliant on the top of my deck here in a way that I don't really like. But the Vile resolved, so we've got that going for us. Ooh. I am not going to cast that. I am just going to put that in with Vile. This card is extremely valuable. Yep, that's fine. So kind of a nice thing here. Well, I guess it's not important anymore, but talking about it conceptually anyway, a nice thing would have been if my opponent passed the turn with 2 mana up, I can use Mother of Runes to bait out the Orcish Bowmasters. Stifle, sure. So, what card is more important to always resolve? I think Spirit of the Labyrinth. Let's put this on 2. We have removal for days. And I think I'm going to hold Spirit of the Labyrinth. Like, I think I'd rather have Spirit of the Labyrinth than Mom. And this sets up for situations that look like this one. But yeah, that's fine. Like, that has cost my opponent a card, and it also costs them the ability to Bowmaster's Mom. Like, this is great. I will be activating Vile in bluff situations frequently. Now I maybe just put this in at sorcery speed. If yet another Stifle happens, I want to be able to cast it afterwards. So I'm now sitting here with 3 removal spells for cards like Murktide Regent. I have a protected way to keep card draw off. I will need more pressure off the top of my deck, but I'm in good shape. I'm going to have to get through a lot of life, though. End of turn. Attempt to kill the dragon. We slay the dragon. Let's always no to this and always yield to this for now. Let's crash in with the spirit. I'm going to play out another Mother of Runes. Makes me worse against a random card such as Plague Engineer. But I really need to protect this Spirit of the Labyrinth, and by extension, my second Mother of Runes. Up the Beanstalk may resolve. However, you do not get to draw your card. The Spirit of the Labyrinth is a boss. We will be activating Vials as bluffs, even if we don't have anything. My opponent has shown me a commitment to being a Stifle player. I can't take my opponent off black or green. Long term, if I get another Wasteland or a port, I would like to take them off of black. So that's the color I will choose to attack. And my opponent will just immediately go in for a land. Lorien Revealed, not great in the face of Spirit of the Lab. They pick up a new Underground Sea to replace the one that they just lost. I think I am just going to attack for 3. It's not crazy talk to attack for 4, but I don't think I need to risk that. Oh, this is the ponder of someone who like knows that they need to fix this situation or they're going to lose and just accepts ponder as a card that looks at the top 3 to try to sculpt a plan. I respect it. They have shuffled, and we take that one down. All right. A few hours later for me, we're keeping an awkward double colorless source hand where I have to show one of my wastelands on turn 1, which is like not the best, but I don't think I can throw away Mom into Thalia and double wasteland off Vile. Oh shit, okay. Just don't go off on turn 1 and I've got a fighting chance. What's my graveyard hate look like? I know I have a Rest in Peace. I've got Surgicals and Containment Priest. Okay, and it's just Troll in graveyard? This definitely could have gone worse. Oh, fuck yeah. Okay. Alright. We're cooking with gas over here. I get the second Vial into play. I get to put a Mom in and then put a Thalia in. I've got Reanimate for Troll covered. And it is Reanimate for Troll. My opponent gets to have that. I'm going to take my draw step before I inevitably pitch Giver of Runes to this Solitude. because I would love to draw a Samwise. It is a Gonjo, which I assume is just going to be a land here. Yeah, this is always just a land. So let's put in Vile, do Thalia. I am going to remove this immediately and take out the troll. I am not going to attack with Mother of Runes because I don't want my opponent to reanimate Solitude and be able to actually remove a creature. I think missing 1 point of damage per turn cycle is an okay trade-off for keeping that alive. I've also made my opponent's Exhumes worse from here. Let's say always no to both vials, and I can change my mind later. Oh, opponent's fetching now. Just playing around. Oh, sure. Don't love that for me. But there's now a Grizzlebrand in yard. Grizzlebrand is now the primo reanimation target. It may be correct to just attack with Mother of Runes, because pressuring my opponent off of reanimate might be more important than protecting, say, a Thalia from a Solitude. Send him. Only drops my opponent to 16, so like reanimate for 8 life is still perfectly on the table. Alright, it is Exhume. This is one of those like good news, bad news situations where the good news is I remove a Grizzlebrand. The bad news is my opponent draws a gazillion D cards. I don't know that they're supposed to go that deep. They don't get to Lotus Petal or make a land drop here. They're just going to discard a whole bunch of cards. I'm going to attack them for 6, put them to 2. They might have gone too deep. We'll see. Yeah. This is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 damage, putting my opponent to 1. Yep. We take those. Surgical, great. Containment piece. Priest, rest in peace, great. And then we get kind of this secondary tier of cards of like Chalice Path, Deafening Silence, Battle of Bywater, and I guess technically Touch the Spirit Realm that are playable but unexciting. I'm not super interested in Skyclave. I'm not super interested in Sarah Paragon or Jitte. Samwise does really cute things with Vile. I'm not sure that I'm playing Vile. I probably don't need Moms and Givers. These 6 cards are always coming in no matter what. I already pulled Jitte. It's weird reevaluating my Aether Vial when I'm essentially a 2-drop D&T deck, where I don't need that many lands, but the Samwise in particular kind of makes me want it. The first Wasteland is oftentimes enough, though. Same with the first Solitude. So this is Silence Path. The Deafening Silences are worse on the draw, but helps a lot with, like, Grizzlebrand and Atraxa card vomiting. At this point, I've still got 25 creatures, which is enough creatures, and it becomes the question of, like, am I interested in this? I just have more efficient removal already. This can specifically bail me out of multiple creatures. I don't know how interested I am in these. I might just play a Miser's Vial, where, like, if I have it in my opening hand, cool, but I'm boarding in Containment Priest anyway. I have a Surgical to make it to turn 2. I have Solitude and Swords to remove creatures, and I only need 1 land for this hand to pop off. This is totally fine, and I don't think it's the end of the world if I miss a land drop. Opponent keeps on 6. Let's see what they got. I don't love seeing... Oh, shit, it's Thoughtseize themselves. They're just fucking YOLOing on a Grizzlebrand. This is probably going to feel pretty good. So my opponent casts Exhume, and I'm just going to read Exhume word for word here. Each player puts a creature card from their graveyard onto the battlefield. I will surgically extract Grizzlebrand. I'm going to take Grizzlebrand and Grizzlebrand. There's only 2 of those. Anything interesting in my opponent's deck? Bowmaster's Grief, Reanimate, 1 Troll, Archons. Okay, got it. I believe that I am interested in doing the following. I'm going to pitch cast a Solitude, let it go to the graveyard, and then I'm going to return it to play. And this just gives me essentially my Delver. and we kind of end up crushing that league. So this deck ended up being pretty wild. In kind of doing the deck tech, I highlighted the things that were spicy, but perhaps I didn't do a good enough job of highlighting what wasn't here. We don't have a Recruiter of the Guard package. We don't have a Flickerwisp package. This deck is just kind of all about the first couple turns of the game. And in this specific league, that ended up being good enough for what we were doing. It's been a few hours. I don't remember what I lost to. I think it was show and tell. Like I just got omniscienced, and that's not overly surprising. But this one gets a thumbs up for me. I have not generally been impressed by Samwise in Legacy. This is the league where I saw it just absolutely pop off the most. The fact that once you have it in multiples, you can just like keep looping them to keep having the ring tempt you and go further down that line is really cool. Samwise bringing back Solitude repeatedly or Wasteland repeatedly is kind of gross. I do think that things lined up relatively well for us today, but I would not be embarrassed to submit this as a deck list that I played in something like a legacy challenge. So, there's some degree of spice here, but it is the tasteful spice that makes the dish taste good, not the spice that overpowers everything and ruins the dish. So yeah, if you need your copies of Samwise to build this deck, check out Cool Stuff Inc. and use promo code ThrabenU to save 5% off on your next order. Folks, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. See ya.